Okay, the time is 6 o'clock. I'd like to welcome everybody to our May 2nd County Commissioners meeting. And as always, opening in the meeting, call on Commissioner Jerry Simpson for our invocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, when I get on the train of thought for invocation, I usually come across a word I need a definition for, and this one happened to be symbols. And so I Googled it, and it came up off of Wikipedia. It says, symbols facilitate understanding of the world in which we live, thus serving as the grounds upon which we make judgments. People use symbols not only to make sense of the world around them, but also to identify and cooperate in society. That's their definition of symbols. Well, I don't know how many of you have traveled the road. It's Pleasant Grove Church Road. It's off Potter Road, and it goes out of Mineral Springs. It becomes Billy Howey Road as it passes by the Pleasant Grove Campground and leads on to Wesley Chapel. Not too long after you pass the campground, there are a couple of subdivisions on the right, but on the left, there's an old barn sitting in the edge of the field there. It's been there for years, and it's a symbol of Union County's agrarian culture. But what's unique about that barn, it's hard to see right now because it's pretty grown up, but what's unique about it is it was built on a hillside, and over time it's began to lean. And the owner, realizing that time was of the essence, cut a bunch of saplings and placed them along the side of the barn in an effort to keep it standing and fulfilling its purpose. Now, if by providence, I was on Facebook the other day, and there was a story about a farmer who was often called upon to pray at his local church service. He prayed earnestly for the issues of the day and the concerns of his congregation, and then always ended his prayer and said, "And finally, O Lord, prop us up on the leaning side." If you choose, bow with me in an invocation. Almighty God, as we come together to deliberate the issues impacting our county, we ask your presence among us. Help us to lean not into our own understanding, but to acknowledge that you are the source of wisdom and right, and to lean upon you to direct us in a spirit of cooperation and love for one another. Lord, there are those who we lean on every day to shield us from harm, and we pray for all those who serve in law enforcement, fire protection, emergency services, and health care. Cover them with your grace and love as they protect our lives, liberty, and property. Finally, Lord, we face difficult times with difficult challenges. Prop us up, O Lord. Help us to lean on each other, trusting in you to see us through. In Christ's name I pray. Amen. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. We'll move on to informal comments. We've got one person signed up, Bill Whitley. If you would, each speaker must address the board from the lectern and begin their remarks by giving their name, stating whether they are residents of Union County, indicating the municipality within which they reside, if any, and stating the topic about which they intend to speak. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make remarks. A speaker may not yield any of his or her time to another speaker. Speakers may not discuss matters which are the subject of public hearings, and they must be courteous in their language and presentation. Restatements of repetitive comments by the same speaker, whether at the same or separate meetings, may be ruled out of order and terminated by the chair. Personal attacks will not be tolerated. Speakers may leave written comments and/or supporting documents, if any, with the clerk of the board.
Thank you. My name is Bill Whitley, resident 7712 Pleasant Hill Church Road, Marshall, North Carolina. I would like to read by the President of the United States of America a proclamation. Whereas the Senate of the United States duly recognizes the supreme authority and just government of the Almighty God in all the affairs of men and all nations, has by resolution requested that the President to designate and set apart a day of national prayer and humiliation, and whereas it is the duty of nations as well as of men of own their dependence upon the overruling power of God, to confess their sins and transgressions to humble sorrow, yet with assured hope that genuine repentance will lead to mercy and pardon, and to recognize the sublime truth announced in the Holy Scriptures and proven by all history, that those nations only are blessed whose God is the Lord. And insomuch as we know that by his divine law, nations like individuals are subject to punishment and chastisements in this world, may we not justly fear that the awful calamity of civil war, which now desolates the land, may be put punishment inflicted on us for our presumptuous sins to the needful end of our national reformation as a whole people. We have been recipients of the choicest bounties of heaven. We have been reserved these many years in peace and prosperity. We have grown in numbers, wealth, and power as no other nation has ever grown. But we have forgotten God. We have forgotten the gracious hand which preserved us in peace and multiplied and enriched and strengthened us. And we have vainly imagined in the deceitfulness of our hearts that all these blessings were produced by some superior wisdom and virtue of our own. Intoxicated with unbroken success, we have become too self-sufficient to fulfill the necessity of the redeeming and preserving grace, too proud to pray to God that made us. It behooves us then to humble ourselves before the offended power, to confess our national sins and pray for clemency and forgiveness. Now, therefore, in compliance with the request and fully concurring in the views of the Senate, I do by this proclamation designate this apart Thursday, the 30th day of April, 1863, as a day of national humiliation, fasting, and prayer. And I do hereby request that all the people to abstain on that day in their ordinary secular pursuits and to unite at their several places of public worship and their respective homes in keeping the day holy to the Lord and devoted in the humble discharge of the religious duties proper in the solemn occasion. All this being done in sincerity and truth, let us then rest humbly in the hopes authorized by the divine teachers that our united cry of the nation will be heard on high and answered with blessings no less than the pardon of our national sins and restoration of our now divided and suffering country to its former happy condition of unity and peace. I am witness thereof. I have therefore set my hand and caused the seal of the United States to be affixed. Done the city of Washington, the 30th day of March, in the year of our Lord, 1863, and the independence of the United States, 88. Signed, Abraham Lincoln, by the President, William H. Seward, Secretary of State. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that speech. Okay, we move on to our public hearings. Going to call on Jim King, first one up, public hearing text amendments to Table 25-1, Table of Allowed Uses, Section 30-190, Wireless Telecommunication Facilities, and Section 105, Definitions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. Let's see here. All right. Tonight I'm here to give a very brief presentation to the Board of Commissioners regarding a proposed text amendment. Typically, when we come before the board with text amendments, they're staff initiated. Tonight, it's a little bit different. The text amendment is actually initiated by citizens of Union County. So I'm going to be very brief, more or less just give an introduction because they have a presentation that's much more detailed that they'd like to give to you tonight as well. So the applicant for tonight's proposed text amendment is Amber Meadows Homeowners Association and Tullamore Homeowners Association. To give you just a very brief background, the Union County Development Ordinance requires that The wireless support structure is set back from property lines a distance equal to or greater than the engineered fall zone. Some residents have had concerns with the setback requirements, thinking that it's not sufficient enough to protect the health, safety, and welfare of adjacent property owners and nearby residents, and that they feel that the current ordinance does little to keep the structure in harmony with the surrounding area. Therefore, the proposal before you tonight is broken down into 3 sections. First section is going to deal with the table of permitted uses. The second section will be with the actual regulations for wireless support structures and wireless telecommunication facilities. And then the last section will pertain to definitions. So first, they are proposing modification to Table 25-1, which is the table of permitted uses, to state where certain wireless facilities are allowed by right or allowed by special use permit. Second modification is going to be to Section 30.190, wireless telecommunication facilities, and proposed modifications are to the setbacks, 1 for the setback off the property line, and 2 for the setback off of R districts, which is your residential districts, R40, R20, R15, etc. And then the last part of the proposal is to the definitions. They want to modify Section 105.040, which is terms beginning with C, to modify the definition for concealed wireless facility. Second, they want to modify Section 105.070, terms beginning with F, to modify the definition for fall zone. And lastly, they would like to modify Section 105.240, terms beginning with W, to add a definition for wireless support structure height. With that, these proposed text changes are very similar to what was found in the previous land use ordinance, which preceded the current Union County Development Ordinance, as far as setbacks from property line and also from residential structures. With that and the modification to the definitions, staff therefore supports the request. In addition to that, the Planning Board at their April 5th, 2022 meeting, by a unanimous vote, voted to recommend to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the text amendment as presented. I'm here to answer any technical questions you may have pertaining to the current zoning or development ordinance. Otherwise, the applicant is present and they have a much more detailed presentation to give to you.
Maybe you can come back after they present, and if we develop any questions, we could ask you then.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, come up and just announce your names and address, and go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Gary Vale. My compatriot is Tanya McCalley, and we do represent neighborhoods in Marvin, Amber Meadows, and Tullamore. The reason we're here tonight is because, as residents of Union County, our group has had reason to become interested and involved in the process of locating cell towers in Union County. We believe that Union County residents would benefit from a couple of amendments to the UDO language, as Jim has mentioned, to better provide practical protection for public safety and welfare. We're here today to request 5 amendments. All requested amendments are related to wireless support structures. All are intended to ensure and enhance the safety of residents and the protection of property. We will outline these requests for you and we'll explain why we're making each one of them. Our first request involves the current UDO language for wireless structure setbacks, which is on the screen now in front of you. It says, pretty simply, except as otherwise expressly stated, A wireless support structure must be set back from all property lines a distance that is at least equal to its engineered fall zone. The primary issue that we see with this language is that it is defined, that a setback is defined solely in terms of the engineered fall zones. We believe that engineered fall zones can be flawed and should not be granted such total credibility. Why? Purely for reasons of safety. We know that bad things can and do happen to cell towers. We know that they can fall. We know that they can burn. We know that they can be destroyed by tornadoes and high winds. We know these things happen to cell towers in spite of engineering certification. Engineering fall zones vary broadly if you look across the country at the ones that are recorded, but we've dealt directly with one which was 50 feet, and that was from a playground fence. Engineering recommendations have limitations. For example, in testing we've seen involved, wind speeds of up to 112 miles per hour were utilized, which is barely an F1 tornado. F2s and F3s far exceed that. That same testing did not contemplate any wind resistance effect of having an antenna array attached to the top of the tower. It seems obvious that that would make some difference, and we believe that a certification should address items such as that. Beyond that, engineering certifications do not deal with other commonplace exposures. They cannot engineer the effects of accidents and maintenance errors such as a dropped tool, parts, or equipment. They don't anticipate other objects falling from above, such as ice sheets that come off of an antenna array. In fact, ice damage was specifically mentioned in the UDO language prior to the 2014 version you have now. Engineering certification letters, above all, are not warranties. Those letters deal in probabilities, and they use language such as likely and unlikely and most likely. Consequently, there's no absolute assurance of safety, nor are engineered fall zones absolutely fail-safe. Consequently, we think that they should not be solely relied on in setting setbacks. We went back and looked at the pre-2014 version of prior Union County ordinance language and how it approached wireless tower safety. Before the 2014 revision, that ordinance contained a 1-to-1 tower height setback requirement. We believe that language was warranted then, and we believe it's still warranted now. We also researched related language from other North Carolina municipalities and found that several have language that mirror that requirement, or even more distance. We'll distribute a few of those for you if we can, just to give you some idea of what we found when we did our research. That brings us to request number 1, which is that current setback language be replaced with an amended wording which incorporates a 1-to-1 setback requirement for cell towers. All wireless support structures would have a minimum setback requirement of 1 foot for each 1 foot of structure height from all abutting property lines. It's pretty basic language. A 200-foot tower would require a 200-foot setback. A 100-foot tower requires a 100-foot setback, and so on. That is the language that Jim mentioned that parallels the pre-2014 version of the UDO. We believe that any abutting property should have a safety buffer of at least the height of the tower, and that common sense somewhat dictates that. Request number 2 is the new language be inserted, as shown on the screen, that requires a 300-foot setback from any residential zoned property. I need to point out that that is R zones, not RA zones, because the RA obviously is more agricultural. The language would be all wireless support structures would have a setback requirement of 300 feet from all R-zoned property lines. This requirement also is similar to pre-2014 Union County language, which required a 300-foot setback from any residence. Similar language. We found several other municipalities when we did our research that had similar language. As homeowners, we strongly believe that home values are affected by towers being placed in close proximity to the homes. Discussions with local realtors supported that position, and our research found articles stating basically the same thing. The National Association of Realtors conducted a survey which showed that 94% of buyers would expect to pay less if a home were located near a tower. 79 simply stated they would rather not buy a home within a few blocks of a cell tower. Sale of residential real estate most often supports the old adage that perception is reality. First impressions do matter. The current UDO language, in fact, would permit location of a tower 50 feet from a residential property line. A setback of 300 feet provides a more realistic spacing. 300 feet sounds like a lot. In BASIC, to put some perspective on it, it's like sitting at one goalpost on a football field and looking at the other goalpost. It's really not that far, particularly when you're talking about a tower that can be anywhere between 100 and 300 feet, depending on what's allowed. We don't have exact measurements, but the next slide's an example of a current location on Newtown Road in Marvin and provides some idea of what can happen. This comes from a schematic, but it depicts a cell tower in an industrial zone, but it is adjacent to a residential zone tract of land with existing homes. 300 feet would at least provide some spacing for something like that. Request number 3 is in the definition sections, as Jim mentioned, of the UDO language, as the last section of the ordinance. One of those contained therein currently is a definition for concealed wireless facility. We believe this definition is confusing, and we'll go into detail in a minute, and we requested it be amended for clarification. The current UDO definition says, for the purpose of administering and interpreting the wireless telecommunication facility regulations of Section 30.190, this term means any wireless facility that is integrated as an architectural feature of an existing structure. If you stop right there, that's fairly clear, but it doesn't. It goes on to say, or any new wireless support structure designed to camouflage or conceal the presence of antennas or towers so that the purpose of the facility or wireless support structure is not readily apparent to the casual observer. This language has the effect of combining those two things and using them as one definition. We have a problem with that. We think that current definition is pretty clear when it comes to concealed. We have no problem with that. But then it proceeds to include a camouflage tower. There's a clear difference between concealed and camouflaged as respects safety and property damage to adjacent parcels. Concealed towers are structurally contained and provide a much higher safety factor because they have that support. They're also less obtrusive and much more likely to provide harmony with surrounding structures and the community in general. Camouflage is purely cosmetic. It does nothing to actually change the structure of the tower itself. Camouflage has no effect of increasing or adding public safety. Creating a monopine tower doesn't improve the possible fall damage area in any way. In addition, camouflage realistically does very little in any way to conceal the fact that it's a freestanding tower. It still looks like what it is, pretty much a freestanding tower. We believe camouflage towers, consequently, should not be treated any different than any other freestanding tower. We certainly believe they should not be included with concealed towers when it comes to a definition. So we request that the definition be amended as shown on this screen, which is our third request. Concealed wireless facility for the purpose of administering and interpreting the wireless telecommunication facility regulations of Section 30.190. This term means any wireless facility that is integrated as an architectural feature of an existing structure. What we've done here is obvious and pretty simple. We just put a period there at the end of that thought, which is complete and self-contained, and we left the rest of that out because we don't think it belongs there. It's exactly the same as the current wording, it's just part of it. If we do that, then we need to make the same distinction in Table 25-1. because that shows how different facilities are to be treated in terms of permitting. Concealed wireless facilities are currently shown as permitted by right across the board. We have no problem with that. Prior to our change of the definition, including concealed wireless facilities up to 60 feet in height were included by right up to, well, in the 3 RA zones, but we'd like to see them put into special use permit sections in zones that are R zones, in a zone that's O, and zone that's B. This applies to R zone only, obviously, not to RA zones. The tower site may still be granted, but by having it put as a special permit, the Board of Adjustment at least has the latitude and gets a chance to review the site, what's going on with that site, ask questions, ask adjustments if appropriate, or whatever. So we would like to suggest those changes be done in Table 25.1. Finally, request number 5 is to insert a definition which the UDO language simply does not have at present, and we think should have. Wireless support structure height. The vertical distance measured from the ground to the uppermost point of the tower, including antennas and lightning rods. We suggest that language be added as a definition because the UDO tower doesn't have height in it at all now in terms of a definition, and consequently you take lightning rods, antennas, and other tower components, you get a lot of discussion about whether they belong in the height measurement or not, and they can be left out very easily. A clear definition such as this language inserted would ensure that the application of UDO language and setback requirements are easily understood and consistent from site to site. It's purely a clarification. This definition also was adopted from other North Carolina municipal ordinances, several of which had this or something similar. Interestingly enough, it's also similar to one which was contained prior to that 2014 rewrite. For some reason, it wasn't carried forward. We're not sure why not. In closing, basically, those are our 5. Instead of an engineer determining the fall zone solely on his own by a certification letter, towers would automatically be set back from property lines the same distance as their fall height. Secondly, all towers would be set back 300 feet from residential property lines. Thirdly, a concealed tower would be allowed anywhere by right. We have no problem with concealed towers. Fourthly, towers 60 feet high or smaller would require a special use permit in R districts, office districts, and B2 districts, but not in RA districts. And finally, we would add a definition for tower height. Thank you very much. I think Jim's going to field any questions you have, or I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, I'm amazed at your presentation.
Well, this is the lady you should be amazed with. She's very good at this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jim, would you come back up? I guess the first question that comes to my mind, this makes so much sense. Why didn't we think of it?
Well, as stated, it was in the previous land use ordinance. When we drafted the current development ordinance, we hired an outside consultant to do that. And we relied on them, as far as credibility and everything, to make the recommendations to how we should move forward. I concur with the applicant. I'm always one that would rather err on the safe side. And, if you have a 1 to 1 foot
Right.
ratio in height to distance off property line, makes sense.
Well, short of approving it tonight, we probably would need to run it through legal. Will you follow up with Jason Kay and just make sure we're, and I don't know, it may be our terms to call, but it sounds very good. I appreciate the work y'all have put into it. And let's make sure we're on good legal footing, and we'll have it on the next agenda. Any questions?
Do you want to ask if there's anybody who wants to speak in opposition?
They were signed up, and it was the person that signed up to speak. Is there anybody here in opposition to it? The one person that signed up was the presenter.
Just want to be sure.
As Jerry once told me, I got this. But thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
And thank you, citizens, for putting such hard work in. What was your background?
What was my background? I spent 30 years working for a major corporation, and we handled insurance clients internationally and nationally. I did a lot of client relationship work and managed a few times, things like that. I've done some presentations.
Well, your research was very impressive, and your presentation was too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, hearing nothing else, I'll close the public hearing on text amendments to Table 25-1, Table of Allowed Uses, Section 30-190, Wireless Telecommunications Facilities, and Section 105, Definitions. Okay, now I'm going to open the public hearing. Closure of a portion of LaSalle Street. Bjorn?
Evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request that follows on the heels of action by the City of Monroe several months ago to close a portion of LaSalle Street. Process for this is a bit unique because Union County typically doesn't own roads, so the fact that we have little sections here and there is often a surprise. We had to research the process for going through this, conduct the public hearing, notification, sent letter to the adjacent property owner, signs posted on site, advertising in the EJ for 3 weeks. The action requested of you, you've already approved the resolution to hold the public hearing, which we're doing tonight. If there's no action, I think the applicant may request it to be put on the business agenda for tonight for action. After that is approved, if it is approved, the parcel boundaries with the new survey would be filed with the Register of Deeds, and then the parcel map would be updated, and the 2 parcels that are affected would reflect the addition of the right-of-way. This is the survey of it. It's real easy from a property owner perspective because the applicant owns all 4 parcels that are affected, 2 in the City of Monroe and 2 behind it in the unincorporated portion of the county. It's on US 74 Roosevelt Boulevard, just west of Morgan Mill Road. This is what it looks like from an aerial perspective. There's automotive businesses on 3 of the 4 parcels. The one in the northwest is all in floodplain. And you can see where the right-of-way is. And to the south of it, inside the City of Monroe, which is purple, has already been consolidated and reflected in the parcel maps. This is truly orphaned right-of-way at this point. And again, it's all floodplain. This is the portion that's being considered for tonight. And this is what was approved by Monroe several months ago. And these are the 4 parcels. Now, in terms of what it actually looks like, this is on the left, the right-of-way looking away from US 74, not very useful. It's floodplain behind there, so it's forever going to be not very useful. And then on the property, or the picture on the right, shows the existing section of road, which is really just a driveway back towards US 74. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, the applicant's here to provide additional background on the request.
Bjorn, when this came through agenda, I wondered why had the city never taken this in?
I don't know. That's the short answer.
Is it because it's in a flood zone and we require some maintenance or anything?
It could be that they were never asked. There's history behind it, but a portion was in the city and a portion was not.
Okay. There's nobody, What is the wishes of planning on this? I know there's
We're
not.
fine with it. I mean, there's no transportation benefit to this, and especially with now that the portion inside the city is gone, I mean, it's truly can't be a road.
Okay. Any questions?
But we do have the applicant here to provide additional information.
Okay, if he would like to come up. Thought I recognized you.
I'm hoping this is like the last presentation that you say it was so easy you wish you thought of it yourself, so. But no, I think he's pretty much said everything of what we're trying to do. The street's pretty much useless, other than anyone but us. We own all 4 parcels now, Brandon Reeves Auto World. Then you have LaSalle Street, then we bought the other property with those hideous buildings on them, which we're about to knock down, which are an eyesore to Union County. So we were just trying to put it all together, kind of underneath one roof, so to speak.
Well, it appears to me you're just trying to be a good citizen and improve the looks of your land.
Yeah, we're 100% trying to improve it. It's an eyesore and has been for a long time. So we'd really like to knock those buildings down, flatten all that, and get it looking better.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Brandon.
We had talked, I'm not sure how this works or whatever. Could we put this on the agenda, on the business agenda for
I
tonight? Is
will
that
put it,
possible?
I will put it at the end
Okay.
of,
All right. Thank you. Appreciate our
I'll
help.
put it at the beginning of business so you won't have to wait.
Thank you. I really appreciate your help. Thank you.
All right, I move that we close the public hearing on closure of a portion of LaSalle Street. Okay, we're going to now have a public hearing rezoning case number 2021-003, Creech. Bjorn?
This public hearing has the potential of being even shorter than the previous one because before I get into the actual content, both the applicant and the town of Wingate have requested this public hearing be continued until your June 6th meeting to allow them to work out some issues between the town and the applicant, which could change the recommendation of public comments that you would hear at a public hearing. So before I go any further, whether you want to continue this and we'll re-notify the property owners for a later date, or if you want to continue with the public hearing.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we continue this to the June 6th
Yes, sir.
meeting. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Thank you.
Close the public hearing on rezoning case 2021-003 Creech. Okay, public hearing, First Choice Glass, Project Skylight 2 to consult Step 2 Economic Development Incentive Grant in an amount not to exceed $152,000 over a 5-year period.
Chairman Rape, Commissioners, Manager Watson, it is my pleasure to bring before you tonight an Economic Development Incentive Grant request by First Choice Glass, otherwise referred to as Project Skylight 2. First Choice Glass is a manufacturer of architectural window systems used in multi-story office buildings. In fact, many of the more prominent new buildings in Uptown Charlotte have First Choice Glass designed and installed window systems. The company was founded in 2005 and has operated out of its current facility on Westwood Industrial Drive here in Monroe for the past 17 years. They have 65 full-time employees as well as numerous subcontractors. When you add the subcontractors to the folks that are employed as a result of this company's efforts, you get close to 300 people who are working. The business is growing at a very rapid rate, and they have simply outgrown their current space. First Choice Glass began conversations with our office in early 2022 about the potential investment of $8 million that would include a new 50,000 square foot manufacturing and distribution facility on approximately 8 acres of land on Highway 200 near Stafford Street Extension. This new plant will allow First Choice Glass to meet the rapidly growing demand for its products. Again, the company is considering an $8 million investment. If Union County is the selected location, construction would begin third quarter of this year with occupancy targeted by mid-2023. The hiring of approximately 10 additional people at an average hourly rate of $22 would begin shortly thereafter. The company has indicated that incentives are a very important factor for the project, and the company is considering other locations in nearby counties and across the border in South Carolina. Tonight, we're requesting your consideration of a Step 2 Economic Development Incentive Grant in an amount not to exceed $152,000 to be paid over 5 years, beginning in fiscal year 2025, based upon the Union County Tax Office's appraised value each year on the company's anticipated investment of $8 million. Based on this investment and holding all other factors constant, including depreciation, the company would pay estimated ad valorem taxes on that new taxable investment of $235,000 over that 5-year grant period. When we consider depreciation, the anticipated economic development grant amount would be $149,500 over 5 years, with an estimated ad valorem revenue of $231,500 over that same grant period. Of course, actual tax revenue to Union County will be based on the current tax rate applied to the assessed value of the investment each year after depreciation. We presented this project to the Monroe Union County Economic Development Board of Advisors at their April 12th, 2022 meeting, where they unanimously supported our bringing the project to you tonight for your consideration. As we do with all of our projects, we performed a cost-benefit analysis, and this project shows a 1.74 to 1 return over the first 5 years of the project or the grant period, and that increases to 4.48 to 1 return over the life of the project. We will present this opportunity to Monroe City Council next week at their May 10th meeting, where a similar economic development grant will be requested. Therefore, the Monroe Union County Economic Development Board of Advisors and staff recommend the award of the Step 2 performance-based incentive grant to First Choice Glass in an amount not to exceed $152,000 in order to help secure this $8 million investment. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Jason Savage. He is Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at First Choice Glass, who is available to answer any questions should you have them, as am I.
Mr. Savage, if you want to come forward, I will tell you I have known about your company for several years and have heard nothing but remarkably good things about it. I think y'all are in a specialized market with the glass that you do for office and buildings, and
Thank you, definitely appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, some projects, for instance, you've talked about downtown Charlotte, but the Carolina, the Bank of America Stadium, I mean, a lot of that glass there that we did, the interior, exterior, UNC Charlotte, just locally, even down to Charleston, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia, so we kind of spread throughout.
from what I understand, y'all send product all over the country.
That is correct, even to Alabama, many different places.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. There's nobody signed up to speak against it, so I will put it at the beginning of our business meeting for a vote.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'll now close the public comments on First Choice Glass. Okay, the consent agenda, and I believe Commissioner Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask 22-264 to be placed on the regular agenda.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, I will make a motion to approve the amended consent agenda, which has 22-264 removed. All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll get 22-264. Van, if you want to come up and present, I believe the Commissioner's main thing was he wanted information to the public. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just wanted a little background on the information. Man, I appreciate you taking your time out to do this.
No problem.
You know, appraisals and valuation can be a sensitive subject, and I guess that, and maybe I'm ignorant, but the thing that caught my eye was income valuation approach. That sounds like income taxation to me, so.
No,
just-
sir, it's-
Just clarify what we're doing here.
In the appraisal of property with residential, commercial, industrial, we have to consider 3 approaches to value. Those approaches are cost, which is how much it costs you to build the plant that's typically used in industrial, historically used in commercial as well in Union County. The sales approach will be primarily for residential property. That establishes that market is well accepted and established. Certain types of properties are built to generate income. They use that income to determine the value of that property. It is in no way taxing the income earned on that property. So what this product does is an online database that allows us to establish, to consider that approach to value. Historically, we have not had access to that data. This is a new service that many counties, several counties in North Carolina at this point, have signed on for. Basically, they provide financial information that these companies provide through loan documents, closings, market analysis for different types of industries, and they have data for businesses located in Union County. Again, this is the first time we've looked at this. We need access to the data to consider that approach to value. We do get appeals from property owners using the income approach from their appraisals, but we do not have access to the same information. So this is to allow us to develop those valuation models in conjunction with the 2025 reappraisal for certain types of properties. I don't know if that helps.
So the income that is derived from that property does not go into the valuation of that property?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
It does not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And just to make clear, so if somebody is an owner-occupant of a residential property, this income-producing information would have no bearing whatsoever
No, sir.
on the calculation of the assessment?
No, sir.
Okay.
Would not. Typically, where you'll see these used, this approach used as the most appropriate determination of value would be commercial office space, hotels, motels, potentially, and we saw some of this on residential units last year with some companies that own groups of homes, that they use them as rental properties. Instead of using the sales approach, they would come in and try to use the income approach for those types, and we didn't have that information to compare. And so in a limited case on a residential property, but it would have to be if somebody, for example, we choose American Homes for Rent, they're a large land property owner in the county. They use income approach for their valuation appeals. We use sales approach to value the property on our side. So that would allow us to reconcile that data and use that to determine the most appropriate course of value for that property.
Well, you just piqued my interest. So we actually had people that were appealing their value based on what they were renting it for.
Yes, sir.
How successful were they on appeal?
Most of them not, because a residential unit is a residential unit. Now, if you have there is a neighborhood in the Waxhaw area that is roughly 100 homes, that 100% of that subdivision is rental units, high-end rental units. And so in that case, it may be appropriate for us to take that subdivision, set that apart from the residential sales database, say, okay, let's look at this from an income approach. And we need this data to consider that and to be able to develop those valuation models. so
But
that we can
if there's no restriction in that 100-home subdivision that you can't buy a house in there and live in it, then how does it make them, they shouldn't be held to any different standard than residential houses?
The issue with that particular neighborhood in that instance, this would be a rare occurrence that we would use it on residential property. But that's just an example of where we still typically default to the sales approach. But in that neighborhood, they paid to build and develop that neighborhood, the rental company did, and they own all the houses there, and they're not selling them.
Do you see this expenditure returning dividends to your department?
Absolutely. Not to our, it would benefit our department from a data standpoint, but it's going to benefit the county as well from a valuation standpoint. It should provide us, we can point to some examples that we won't name in this discussion, but we know there's one property that we valued at cost this year for the 2021 reappraisal. We have about $20 million on it in value for the cost approach. We know they had an income appraisal that was done 2 years prior that valued the property at $48 million. So that alone more than pays for the cost of this software purchase. And for us, it's about establishing the best approach to value and making sure we're armed with the same data that taxpayers are, so that we can give them the benefit of the doubt and go with their numbers or defend ours, depending on the situation.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hale?
Yeah, you said that a lot of your value is what the purchase of the house or what it cost. Because this corporate entities coming in and buying up houses, they're paying sometime double-digit above the value of the house, and it's driving the rest of the homeowners trying to purchase homes out. So I think if they want to pay $50,000 more for a house, I think that should be your value, because if I paid $50,000 more, that's what I would have to pay.
It's definitely a factor in setting that value.
So if you can use this software to validate and make sure we're fair to all of our taxpayers, I'd have to support it.
We'll make the motion.
I'll make a motion that we adopt
22-264.
all right.
All in favor? Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you for staying, Dan. Okay. Okay, at the beginning of business, I said I was going to put 2 of the public hearings on. Let me go back and find them. My other daughter got married this weekend, and I feel like I'm in slow motion. And sometimes I'm thinking I'm talking a lot lower than I did because I hollered a lot Saturday night. Okay. On 22-281, the text amendments to Table 25-1, Table of Allowed Uses, Sections 30.190, Wireless Telecommunication Facilities, and Section 105, Definitions.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
actually, that was the one that we were referring back to legal. Just to
I'm
make
sorry.
sure.
I'm sorry. Don't mind interrupting me when I'm going down the wrong road.
Item number 22-220, closure of a portion of LaSalle.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna make a motion on closure of a portion of LaSalle Street. All in favor? Aye. Okay, and first choice last project Skylight 2 to consider a step 2 economic development incentive grant in an amount not to exceed $152,000 over a 5-year period. I'll make that motion. All in favor to approve it? Aye. Thank you very much. Now, hurry up and get it producing. Okay, the next one, I believe Mr. Joyner's going to come up. It's always confusing to me to sit in a meeting with Dennis because they'll say, well, Dennis, what do you think? And they'll be talking to Mr. Joyner, but
Thank you, Commissioner Rape and fellow commissioners and Manager Watson. We are the recipient of some Harpa funding to support school health team workforce development. Sorry. This funding comes to us, this ARPA funding through the state is pass-through money, obviously from the feds, through the North Carolina Division of Public Health. The total funding available is $261,457. The purpose of this funding, as you see there, is to provide temporary funding to local health departments in support of school nurse or school health serving positions to provide services to students. This could include supplementing salaries of current positions to improve retention, contracting or hiring of new positions to fill gaps, staff development and training, or IT support. These funds are made available to us through an agreement addenda, which is typical for how the state provides funding to local public health departments. As you know, we do not manage or operate the school health nurse operation, so we wanted to make these funds available to the local school system to support their school health team workforce. We reached out to all the public schools and public charter schools who have school health teams or nursing staff on them or in those schools. Both Union County Public Schools as well as Union Academy Charter School were interested in participating in receiving some of these funds. The other two that had small operations declined. The allocation of these funds are for fiscal year 22 and 23. It carries over into next fiscal year. We made the allocations based on the school health staffing complement, and so you see there Union County Public Schools would be receiving $253,090, and that's based on 60 staff, and we'll take the bulk of the funds that we're receiving through this. We're coming to you tonight to allow us to engage in agreement to pass along those funds to the schools.
Okay, I will make a motion to authorize the county manager to negotiate and execute an agreement substantially consistent with this agenda item. All in favor? Yes.
Any strings attached to this, anything that we have to do and required to get this money? The schools will have to do?
The agreement addenda has fairly limited strings that are tied to it. Those requirements are what you see there in terms of how the purposes for use of the funds, and those would be passed along to the schools, and the schools have seen those. They understand what the agreement addenda requirements are. We would need them to comply with that because we still have to report back to the state as to how the funds were used, but that's not been an eye-opener for them so far.
Okay, thank you.
All in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what I remembered hearing, especially during the pandemic, is the shortage of nurses in the schools. So not all schools have nurses, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis.
In the public schools?
Yes.
I believe almost all of them do now. I know there have been some vacancies, so I don't think they're fully staffed now, but I know they augmented some positions. Michelle, you may have some.
Yes, my understanding is when if they didn't have an actual position in their FTE, that they have utilized contract staff throughout the pandemic to make sure that they had coverage at the schools. But I think they have a position for all of their schools currently. That's my understanding.
Okay, well, I'm just saying it's a good thing to be able to support the schools and ensure that we have the nurses necessary, because we saw the importance during the pandemic, for sure. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm sorry for missing that.
Not a problem.
We got to change the sign to
Oh, is
Steel
that
Hall.
okay?
Okay, appointments to boards. There is one vacancy on the Board of Equalization and Review, which has been advertised in accordance with the board's rules and procedure. An application has been received from Thomas J. Smith. No other applications have been received. I asked a couple of people that used to serve on it, and they said, man, that's hard work. So I'm very proud that Mr. Smith applied for the job. No one else did, so I'll make a motion to appoint Thomas J. Smith to the Board of Equalization and Review. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of dates for the board. May 9th, we have a budget workshop for you, standard on our calendar as part of that process. May the 18th and 19th, we've scheduled 2 one-half-day workshops related to public works items. First day will cover future CIP projects, ranking those priorities. We'll do an overview of the rate model, representatives from our financial advisors and the company that does our rate forecasting and rate modeling will be here to provide information to you and answer any questions that you may have relative to any of those, how the cost of those CIP items impacts rates, so there's a clear understanding about what that may be. And then we'll have an update on system development fees. Day 2 will be mainly focused on public works operating budget, future capital projects budgets, finalizing any changes necessary to water and sewer rates that the board may wish to make. And then we'll take up the second half of a discussion of the second half of those miscellaneous charges that Public Works covered with the board last year. If you recall, the board adopted some changes to miscellaneous fees and took the first one half of that change last year, and we'll be presenting that information to you fresh on the second day of those presentations. In addition, May the 26th, we have a scheduled budget workshop and look forward to presenting the recommended budget. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Simpson. Commissioner Rushing.
No comment.
Commissioner Williams.
No comments.
Commissioner Helms.
Yes, I'd like to congratulate Chris Platay. He was very successful for us in Raleigh by getting our Monroe Union County Economic Commission licensed as a government entity. That's quite an accomplishment, and thank you very much, sir.
Well, I think tonight was a group hug by all of us. Union County Weekly said we need to do a group hug, so we showed them we could get through one without getting personal. With that, motion to adjourn.